Welcome back to another episode of In Systems We Trust. My name is Marquis. I'm your host, and today I'm speaking with Paul Kortman of Connex Digital. Paul brings a unique combination of skills and abilities to the table. His 12 years of experience in IT enables him to easily understand complex technologies, while his liberal arts degree has equipped him with outstanding people skills. His marketing expertise enables him to think strategically about business, and his years of experience as a small business owner allows him to clearly communicate with other business owners. Paul has 4 children, loves horseback riding, and is looking for his next great hiking adventure. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks for having me. It's really fun to be here.
Good. I'm glad. And again, thank you for agreeing to do this. I know you are very, very busy. And so definitely appreciate your time. Looking forward to digging in today. As I mentioned off air, you're our first Zapier expert when it comes to the tool and how we relate that to automation in business. So I'm looking forward to learning from you today. And I know we're going to chat about a lot. So I typically will start with any guests just kind of bringing us up to speed. I mean, you spoke in your bio about your varied background and what you love to do in your time off, but tell us what brings you to this point. What does your experience look like? What does your background look like? And how did you get to this point where you are today?
Uh, crazy stories all over the map, trying to figure out what to do in life. And so it's really fun working with my high school age teenagers right now, and they're trying to figure out what to do, my kids, I should say, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And it's like, I've done like probably 7 careers by now, so I wouldn't worry about it. And I think my seventh is the successful one. We'll see how this goes. I've only been doing it for 13 years, so I think that's success at this point. But to get right down to it, I was running a digital marketing productized service agency. And when it comes to productized service, I hope that your audience understands, like, we were trying to automate as much as possible to have, like, it's still human service involved, but it's productized. And so it's a clean sales pitch. This is what it costs. Here's some add-on features, and then we will fulfill it. Boom, 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 done. It was in the SEO business. It was link building, and let's just say I didn't sleep well at night because all SEOs are snake oil salesmen. So,
Mm.
but the long and short of it is, while I was doing that, while my team and I were doing that, we ended up using Zapier. And I know you focus a lot on Asana, but we use Zapier and Trello. And we built our entire system in that so that we could get client feedback, we could acknowledge when we actually had a link acquired, etc. And so I could have, I don't want to say lower level employees, but I could have folks doing stuff that then would trigger communications at a professional level to the client. And so this whole systematized and automated thing caught Zapier's attention. And so, wandering around trying to figure out how to do life, I ended up building a system. Zapier caught a hold of that and said, hey, we want you to be part of our experts program that we're starting, and we want you to build that for other people. And so, to give you an idea, folks who come to Zapier, multi-step Zap, like how can I get a thing that does this and then does this and then does this?
Yeah.
We had broken the system a couple of times with Zapier by building 99-step zaps. They
Wow.
put an arbitrary limit of 100 steps. We're more efficient now. Zapier has grown up in
Good.
the last 6 years, 5 years, and so there's different ways to do things. So it doesn't take 99 steps, but yeah, I've built multiple 99-step zaps. And yeah, so that just brings us to today, where now we run a 16-person agency that all we focus on is process automation and data manipulation for our clients. So getting, hey, Paul, how can I get it so that when I do this action in this spreadsheet, it sends this email? Or how can I get
Mm.
it when I'm working in Airtable that it does X, Y, and Z in my email marketing campaign, etc.
Okay, very cool. So I'm curious, meaning getting to that 99 action, limit. Did you break the system? Did you break Zapier and then they had to get involved, or what did that
No,
look like? Okay.
I haven't yet. I've been super impressed with Zapier's backend and infrastructure. I haven't ever really broken Zapier, but we have gotten to the point of where there's a little error that says you can't do that. And we've reached out to Zapier support and said, "Hey, can we get past this?" And there's been sometimes, because I've been there, because I don't want to say the right people, but at one point in time, my picture was on a fridge in the office of somebody, but um, they they give us special exceptions now and again, and
Got it.
so for example, like they limit paths, how many paths you can have when you get into this. It's branching logic, etc. If this, then do that. Otherwise, if this, do that.
Got
They
it.
limit how many paths you can have, and we have a special arrangement that we can get past that limit.
Tell
And
me more
so,
about that. And tell me more about that in your relationship with Zapier. I mean, are you connected with their product team? Are you helping them make decisions on which way the product goes? Or are you delivering for their clients? Curious what percentage of the relationship is back end
so
product versus client support.
very little of it is back end product.
Okay.
The product teams that I am connected with are the ones who are doing um, more your new features. So
Okay.
tables, interfaces, and their latest with AI. So I work with those teams frequently, but me personally, I should say. Um,
Okay.
but then, our whole agency works with their partnership team. And so that's just fulfilling work for their clients. And, we're making people happier with Zapier. That's why the name, it rhymes with happier. In case you ever wondered, that's
You
where
can
it
tell
came
he's a
from. And I
dad.
just, I just tripped onto that. So I
Yeah.
have to bring it out. But, I've you're around a company, you're servicing a company's clients long enough, and eventually you just get to know the right people. And so there's some folks over at support that know us and know, hey, when they ask for this, we've gotten special exceptions. But when it comes to like actual product development and whatnot, they keep us at an arm's reach, us
Right.
consultants. So
Right on.
we try to push the system a little too hard sometimes, and they're just like, that's not your. So we're advanced users, us consultants are, and so we know where the skeletons are, we know
Mhm.
how far the limits can go, and the average user won't ever face that. And so the struggles we face on the product, Zapier's like, well, that's not, you're not our core user. We don't care.
Right.
They're not that cold about it, but they want to make it as simple as possible for anybody who can use Google Office suite or whatever, Google Docs. If you can create a
Yeah.
Google Doc, if you can create a Google slide presentation, then you should be able to create an automation in Zapier. And that's one of the things, as far as like startups and SaaS world, that I'm really impressed with Zapier, is that they stay true to their mission better than anybody else I've ever seen, and they don't get pulled away by, oh, we need this shiny object or that shiny object. Even to the point that lately they've been working with AI, which is a shiny object, you might say, but their whole goal is to bring it to the average user. And the average person, if you can build a Google spreadsheet, you should be able to use AI to automate your integrations. And that's what
That's
Zapier is
great.
working on.
That's great. I love the you answered what my question was going to be, which is who is the core user? What is it for? For anyone who's listening though, who's not familiar with Zapier, who's never even tried to create a Zap, what does it look like under the hood? What are some of the things you can do with it, just to kind of shed some light on the functionalities of the platform?
Yeah, so a lot of people who don't know about it come to Zapier thinking, firstly, about social media. And so when I
Mm.
tweet, I want it to also go to LinkedIn, or I want it to also go to Facebook or whatever. That drives me crazy. And if you come to me with those questions, I probably won't do very well. Um, where it comes into good play, so Zapier is a bridge. Zapier is an integration tool. And where it comes into success is when you're dealing with a business, small, medium, large, whatever, and you need to get data from one software application into another software application or into multiples. And so that data could be a lead. Let's say, for example, I receive leads over email and they come in from, like, I'm a realtor. One of our realtor clients receives leads over email. They come from Zillow, so they're formulated correctly, but they come over email. And he's like, but I use this CRM tool over here and I have to copy and paste it in. And so what I often talk to folks about when they're looking at where can I use Zapier? Don't focus on, I mean, yeah, you can look at what tools you're using, et cetera, but focus more on in your business, in your job, in your workflow, where are you copying and pasting? Anytime you're copying and pasting, that's so 2010. And so we need to get you into the next decade here where we can automate that. You push a button, that data goes in. The second thing is anytime you're repeating tasks. So every time I get this type of email, I have to do X, Y, and Z. Or anytime you're following a process. So just like I said, X, Y, and Z. When this happens, I have to do this. That's when we start talking automation. I'm a huge Zapier fanboy, but there are other tools that can help. It's more along the lines of choosing the right tool. We are tool agnostic, even though we were won the Zapier Expert of the Year award last year. But we are still tool agnostic, and we want to make sure that you're like, okay, instead of you have this checklist, this SOP, this process that you're following, how can we help you to get it so that those dominoes trigger automatically and everything happens and it moves you into more of a higher level thinking in whatever position or role you're in, instead of, okay, I'm the lead generator and I have to, every time I get a lead on Facebook, I have to move it over into our CRM. It's like, okay, well, how can we get you into higher level thinking of which Facebook ads generate more leads and which Facebook ads do I need to tweak and adjust, knowing that those leads automatically get into the CRM. So that's that's our whole mission in business.
Incredible. And based on industry, like, I mean, you're talking about sales here, which can go across any type of industry. Are there specific automation strategies that you would implement for a certain type of business or department that are more or less baseline that you just have seen implemented so many times that you just kind of come in and you say, hey, you need this, we're going to set it up for you? Or does it really just come down to the specific use case and the needs of that business?
Well, both. So I'm a bit of a generalist in the fact that, like, automation applies to every vertical, every industry, every department.
Okay.
Um, but there are certain things that it's like, okay, leads need to get tracked, put into a CRM. We're talking sales. So certain functions in each department, um, fulfillment, shipping, production, uh, management of floor, so ERP, MRP, those sorts of things. All of these can be automated systems. So just like I was talking about how we started out with our Trello system of, like, fulfilling a service to a client, that can be automated. And so it's more along the lines of, for me being the generalist of, like, yes, all departments, all industries, etc. But is there a focus? Could we focus? Yeah, everybody says, choose a niche, focus on that, etc. I have a mission to solve everybody's problem, and so I can't limit myself. But the the idea is, okay. So I mentioned leads. I mentioned, like ERP status changes. That's a big thing. And so anytime there's a workflow, a document that you're producing on, regularly, you have to produce these reports. Okay, well, what's the status of the report? Who's it waiting on? What's the next step, etc. And if you have, whether it's Trello, ClickUp, Asana, Monday.com, something, Airtable, that you're tracking this in, okay, well, then when we change the status to this, we want that information pushed elsewhere. We want another report pulled. We want this to happen. And so, like, it can be in fulfillment, it can be in notification, it can be client customer communications. Anything can be automated. And as I mentioned earlier in the show here, if you can, well, how I like to say it is if you can put it in a logical English statement, when this happens, do this. And you can also include those branching statements. So when this happens, if this value is X, do that. If that value is Y, do this. If you can write that process out, even bullet points, it can be automated. And now now you don't have to repeat that again. You've built the process and now a machine follows it and it just makes life better.
Very cool. How do you draw the line between a native integration? Like, so we want to connect two tools. The ones that are coming to mind right now are Asana and HubSpot, but it could be Trello and HubSpot or whatever that CRM is. And, as things evolve, as technology evolves and needs evolve from the users, I mean, we're seeing more and more native automations and integrations being rolled out all the time. Is there a rule of thumb, or do you have, more or less a thought on keeping everything in Zapier as much as possible so you can audit and keep it all clean? Or is there a nice marriage between native features and integration and then tying in a third party integrator like Zapier?
Yeah, I'll do even one step further. So Zapier has its limits, so I'll add a third step
Okay.
onto that, which is building a custom integration.
Okay.
And it can be on Zapier's platform, but it could also be off, and just be like a script, you might say. So there are pros and cons to all the ways of doing that. The native integrations, I try to use those as best as possible because I try to recommend my clients use those as best as possible. The reason for that is it's going to cost less. Let's just be honest, Zapier does have to make money to keep their infrastructure running. And so for every task, for everything you run through it, there's a cost. Now you pay a monthly subscription, which allots so many tasks, but if you can use less of those, then you could lower your subscription cost. So in the grand scheme of things, generally speaking, your native integrations are going to be cheaper, especially at volume. So if we're talking like thousands of data points that you're pushing through every month, I would stick with native integrations. However, native integrations have limits and they have problems. And the auditability, if that's even a word, isn't always
It is now.
there.
Right.
Yeah, you've heard it here, folks. But in Zapier, yes, it does have more auditing capabilities. So, then we might move to that. But sometimes there's like, I'll just take HubSpot's a really bad example because they have a really good Zapier integration. But let's say CRM Alpha, which doesn't exist that I know of. But let's say that has an integration with Zapier where it only can take in new leads, but when you change a deal to one, it doesn't have a trigger in Zapier. And it's like, oh, well, the native integration doesn't do what I need it to do. The Zapier integration doesn't do what I need it to do. We can go that one step further of like, okay, do we build a custom integration with Zapier? So again, you just build the one side of the bridge from CRM Alpha to Zapier that then can integrate with the 6,000 apps that are out there on Zapier. So Asana. So when I mark it as closed one approved inside my CRM Alpha, I now can trigger anything in Zapier, which could include Asana, and now create a project and do all those things. So
Yeah,
that's where, I take your question and I'll raise you one, as if we're playing poker or something here.
good with it.
But just, that there's a need for I like native integrations if they're available. Obviously, I'm a Zapier fanboy, so I'll go to Zapier as quick as I can if it doesn't have the functionality I need, the native integrations. And then I'll take it one step beyond that. If Zapier doesn't have the integrations I need or the functionality I need, then I will we'll either build it on Zapier or we'll build it off of Zapier.
And obviously, there's so much you can do on the platform. Like, I love that you broke it down and said that if you can bullet point what you need, it can be automated. I'm curious about your customers, though, the people that you're serving in this market. What are they typically looking for? So you show up, they say, hey, we want you to come and automate our business. Great. So, what are the typical asks, right? And then when you come in and audit, if they are using the platform already, what are some of the mistakes that you see business owners making?
I got to be really careful because if any of my clients are listening, this is going to be a problem if I talk about their mistakes they're making.
N- no
Um,
names, no names.
so a lot of the times people, the mistakes they get is they there's one newbie mistake when they come to Zapier is they're just like, oh, well, when I get a new record in Salesforce, I want it created in QuickBooks. And it's like, you actually have to map every field. It's not that easy. It's not just like, okay, new contact here, new contact there. It's okay, well, this one has 5 potential email fields, and this one only has one potential email field. So, what do we do if they have those other 4 fields filled out? And that's where, when mistakes that are made in that concept of, they just generally people expect, well, it's just magic. Everybody says Zapier is so easy. And it's like, well, you got to take it one step further of mapping field to field. Um, if you can get that concept, then you'll be much further along and make fewer mistakes because you'll understand, oh, well, Salesforce has 4,000 fields for each record type. Not, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit there. HubSpot and Salesforce have a lot of fields,
Mhm.
and you can create custom fields, and so now you have even more data, and it's like, well, how much of that data am I going to map to whatever system I'm sending it to? Where can I find that data? What is that data? And so sometimes it depends on the personality type. Sometimes it helps to get in and play with it and try to do the data mapping yourself. Sometimes it helps to just say, all right, I can speak it in English, but I need somebody else to do the data mapping and let them take care of that. So it depends on your personality type and how much you want to be involved. But mistakes, that's the number one mistake I see when people come to Zapier their first time, is they're just like, well, I hooked this and this up, and all they did was authenticate their QuickBooks and authenticate their Salesforce account. And it's like, it doesn't just sync automatically. You have to tell it how. Um, and to tell it when. So that's the other thing. Another mistake I see people making is what we call bidirectional sync. And so when a contact is created in Salesforce, create the contact in QuickBooks. Well, when that contact is created in QuickBooks, or if my QuickBooks person creates a contact, I want that to go create in Salesforce. And it's like, well, you just created a loop
Secure loop,
now.
yeah.
And so usually it doesn't happen in creation. It's more along the lines of in updates. And so if a name or an address or an email address is changed, then they want that to go back and forth. We've had that a lot with ticketing systems. So help desk, support desk ticketing systems. One uses Jira and one uses, I don't know, Service Desk or something like that. and they want them to communicate. So if there's a ticket in Jira, there's a corresponding ticket in service desk. When there's an update in Jira, it gets updated in service desk. When it gets updated in service desk, it gets updated in Jira. That is a huge mistake, and you can add at least 2 decimal points onto any quote for a service provider to help you with that,
Now,
because it's just complex.
of course. Now, is Zapier smart enough to recognize that it's in the middle of a loop, or will it just max out your tasks and then you're wondering what's going on?
Max out your tasks. It happens
Yeah.
all the time. They
Okay.
usually, there's some catches in place that, you'll max out your tasks pretty quickly on that day. And then Zapier, if you do that once, Zapier will forgive that and reset your task usage, as long as they're sure that you've cleaned up that loop and that you promise not to do it again. So, Scout's honor, I won't do it again, and
Right.
all of this. And then they'll forgive that. We've done that on behalf of a lot of clients, that they create those loops, then they come to us, we fix the loop, prevent the loop, and then go and get task redemption, or I don't know, just get forgiveness.
Got
And
it.
so it's possible. Zapier is a reasonable company that way.
Can you set a limit on what those tasks are, either daily or weekly, so it can pick up on any irregularities?
So you can. There's
Or
like we're
would
going
you
to get
not want to
real.
do that?
I would never set it
Okay.
up that way.
Okay.
But just to give you an idea, we'll get real meta in our conversation here. Not to say Zuckerberg's company, because he stole a term in our vernacular, and that's not okay. But to raise the conversation up, you can actually use a Zap to control a Zap. So there's
Interesting.
a Zap Manager tool that you can use to trigger when there's so many errors, trigger when there's so many tasks used, etc. And then you can turn Zaps on and off. So remember that whole logic tree that I was talking about. So
Mhm.
you can trigger every day at noon and look at how many tasks were used in that. And if it's over 500 tasks, turn that Zap off. So there are ways to do it. I never implemented that, nor do I foresee a logical reason to do that, because we try to build systems that are more, they can handle it. You code around those problems instead of, and I'll put that code in air quotes, you no code around the errors so that you can prevent that from happening.
And I'm curious, like, what do your engagements typically look like? Because there's obviously so many different places that you can begin. You come in and either you're assessing a loop or you're at the very beginning of one of these engagements. All of the reasons you listed why your customers would reach out to you, right? You're trying to investigate and see where you start. And so are you doing an audit? What does your discovery look like at that point? Just curious how you really dig in and then how you work with your clients kind of month over month.
Yeah, so we've settled on 3 different modalities, to use a big term, whatever. And so the first one's super simple to understand, is just pure consulting. And some people, you can come to us at any stage in the process, and you just, hey, I've looked at some YouTube videos, I've gone through this, I can't figure it out. Can you just help me? Do it for me while I watch, or tell me what to do and get me over these hurdles.
Coach the
And so
coach,
that's,
more or less.
yeah,
Okay.
coach, teach, train, consult. And so that's just hourly. We run a discount at so many hours, whatever. Um, but then the second modality that we do, I prefer to refer to as fractional engineering. And
Mm.
so that's basically like, we know we need help. We know we're in this big systematized situation, and or we need to build this database and we need these integrations, but we can't scope it. We don't know the full project, and it may change as we get into it. Um, but but we need help. And so that's where we would have, X number of hours per week of a fractional engineer who would just run down the punch list, run down the checklist. You get some strategy with that as well. which is just like, okay, well, let's talk through what is it you're trying to do? How can we accomplish that? And then assign it to an engineer and it gets done. The third modality is what I would refer to as your traditional project scope. And that's just if we could sometimes clients will pay us to develop their scope for them. So we'll actually do a full on discovery project and develop their scope, and then they can take that scope of work and farm it to our competitors as well as us and get a quote, a competitive quote on that. But what that will be is we will have that English logic put together of like, this is what needs to happen in this department between these softwares. We research the capabilities. Yes, it is actually possible to do these integrations, to build these tables, this database, etc. And then, obviously we're not stupid. And so when we deliver one of those discoveries, one of those scopes, we put a quote with it as well and say,
Right.
okay, well, here's your statement of work that you can take and farm out to anybody and they can quote it. Here's our quote for it already. And yeah, and those projects can be complex. Where they can be simple-ish. We're doing a data migration for Quora right now, and you think Quora, that's couldn't be simple, is it? And it's like, well, we're dealing with 10,000 docs or more, but they're looking for us. Can we do a proof of concept? And so we agreed to a very limited scope and a proof of concept, and we'll see if we can actually, if our assumptions are correct, if we can actually do it. Um, and then if so, then we'll do the 10,000 documents, which will be fun.
I want to hear more about that, but I'm going to back up real quick for 1 second. Let's talk beyond the English logic, because for me, when we're looking at someone's systems and we're trying to figure out how to build a workflow inside of Asana, we're often process mapping or building on a flow chart for them to understand the ins and the outs, who's involved, and where the pain points are. And so we like to visualize it. But I've been in a lot of meetings where we're kind of describing what the steps need to look like. And I just see my customers' eyes glaze over. So, how are you relaying this really important information to them? Do you get as deep as to process map and share that with them? Or are you just keeping them, on the kind of not the outside, but are you limiting it to that English logic because you know that that's the best way for them to understand it?
I try to bullet point things as much as possible because it covers the two generally, like, I don't want to just put people in two categories, those who need the overview and those who need the detail.
Mm-hmm.
But if we super generalize, that is two main categories that I deal with as far as personality types. And I find that the visual is good for nothing, excuse me, not good for nothing, but just
Okay.
people don't dig into it. They don't understand it. They, whatever, they got to spend a lot of time with it to understand it. And so I find that if I can bullet point it in that English language, that is my best way to make it happen. That when this happens, then we will do this, or the system will do this. We'll build the system to do this, this, and this. And, here's the potential failure points. Here's the potential, or here's the assumptions that we have, etc. And so what I try to do as you're talking through, if you're talking through just, well, what is your workflow process? And what is that? And I just get people talking and I don't actually draw it out. I write it out in bullet points because then they're able to digest that and say, yes, that is true. Or if my if then statements aren't correct, like, well, yeah, if it's over, 3,000, then do this. If it's under 3,000, do this. But I also forgot to tell you, if it's black and over 3,000, I need to do that. If it's blue and over 3,000, I also need to do that. And so then we add in a sub logic statement in a process map workflow that would get ugly.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that with bullet points. But what that means is then my Google Doc gets really long because it's just, it's indented bullet points of like, when this happens, here's the next step. And then we move on to process number two, etc. So,
Awesome. And it sounds like you've done both, right? And taken away the kind of best of both options and arrived at where you're at now. Let's get back to the document migration. You're talking about Quora. Would that be your most complex um, build out to date, or is there another one that you can speak to? I'd love to see just how deep you've gotten with the platform. Maybe it's that 100 step process. Could you speak a bit more to that?
so the I got to be careful because we've expanded beyond Zapier now. That we're doing a lot of
Okay.
Notion, a lot of Airtable, and so our complexities start showing up in there. Um, what when it, when it comes to actual complexities, um, probably I'm just trying to think. Zapier, okay, so Zapier's done a good job at releasing a couple of different new tools and made it significantly easier to make it less complex. So, where the
These are
one that
their
I'm
own
working on right
apps.
now, yeah, so like
Yeah.
Loop.
Okay. Okay.
Loop is an example, Subzap is an example. If you just search on Zapier's blog for Subzap or search on Zapier's blog for Loop, then they have how-to documents and they can explain this. But basically, like looping is okay. So for every person, for every email in this lead, for every email in this listing, do X, Y, and Z. And so now you can have these loops inside of a Zap, which makes it complex, but also doesn't, because before we had that, we had to fire off a new Zap for each email address, let's say. And so there's the complexities mostly come in. The one that I'm working on now that's significantly complex, and I happen to personally be working on it because it's a consulting project, and so it's not my engineering staff who's doing it. Um, and I don't know the why, but they're using Salesforce for their. They're not technically using Salesforce for their invoicing, but they want to, and so they want to put an invoice date, an invoice amount, and a checkbox for okay, now send that invoice. Well, now we have to do a bunch of logic because could it be 6 different invoices for this one project? Who do we send the invoice to? Um, what is the project name or type? And then does QuickBooks actually have that? So they're actually issuing invoices via QuickBooks, but I think we're at 60 steps for that Zap right now of
Wow.
just like, it's all that conditional logic, but then data manipulation because they have a drop down in Salesforce of who is the person that's working this deal or that,
The owner.
this prospect, the
Yeah.
owner,
Okay.
yeah, but not
Right.
just the owner, it's the consultant. So they're a consultancy as well. And so the coach on this project. So now the coach has their own billing code inside QuickBooks. And so now we have to not only create the invoice, but now we have to create a payment to that coach in QuickBooks. And so it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper into what we need to do. And then we need to delay the Zap to only go out on this certain date based on
Right.
whatever they put in there. So the latest one they came to me was, we created a couple of custom fields for expenses, and now we need you to add expenses. If this, add them there. If not that, then add them here. And it's like, well, that's great English. That's going to take a little bit to work that in
Right.
because the way QuickBooks deals with line items, it takes a little bit to make that happen. So, an extra 7 steps to get that logic in. That would be the most complex one that I'm thinking of right now. And it's because Salesforce isn't an invoicing tool.
Right.
And so they're using the way they did it, which works, makes it that there's a lot of data manipulation before the last step, which is creating the actual invoice inside QuickBooks. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's 60 steps to accomplish one thing, and that's to create an invoice. But they're quite happy with it.
Okay. Paul, knowing all that you know now about Zapier, about other no-code, low-code tools, you said you're branching out to Airtable and Notion. If you had to start over again, would Zapier be the tool that you kind of hitch your wagon to? Because we have, Make, formerly Integromat, and I don't want to jeopardize your partnership at all, but Unito, Automate.io, N8N. Why did you choose Zapier? And what are the big differences if someone is exploring which of these third-party integrators to invest in?
So I'll go back. We could go to the browser wars. We could go to the operating system wars. We could still look at our cell phone wars. It
Blu-ray
generally boils
HD.
down, yeah, it's generally
Yeah.
boils down to there's two players. There's, 80% of the market is covered by two players, and then there's everything else. And it's kind of muddy down there at the everything else. So NAN, by the way, Automate.io doesn't exist, but NAN and Pipe, I always say it wrong, Pipe Dream. Yeah, Pipe Dream. They're they're in the muddied waters of they're very good at what they do, but they're very not popular and difficult and don't have the full integrations. Whereas you get a Zapier and a Make. By the way, we're partnered with both of those. So I get to mention both of those. I just can't take clients from one and push them to the other. Um, the they I love them both. I personally am a Zapier fanboy. Would I hitch my wagon to Make when it was Integromat versus Zapier? The moment I heard about Integromat, we hitched our wagon to it, but we were already hitched to Zapier. So we have a bipolar disorder as far as our business is concerned. Um, but they really do different offerings. It's the same fundamental concept of a bridge moving data from one place to another, connecting it, automating it. But we can build apps with Make. And Zapier is trying to make that happen, but it just isn't right there. Zapier's target market is the end user who's good enough to use Google Docs. That is their target audience. Make's target audience is not that at all. Make's target audience is technical people, really, who want to
Mm.
use low code, no code to automate things and have it stable. And so you have to think technically when you come to Make, whereas Zapier tries to make it pretty and you don't have to think about it. And so, we can think of certain operating systems that operate one way or the other.
Sure.
Like if you've ever jumped into I forget what it was even called, but like, yeah, the settings area inside Windows versus the settings area inside Mac.
Right.
Mac just, these are the only three settings that you ever get to choose. And Windows gives you 5,000 settings. Well, that is a very similar comparison to Make, which will give you all of the power, all of the settings. But with much power comes great responsibility, and you can really screw it up in the sense of like not knowing it's confusing to the average user. And so Zapier focusing on more the average user. Now, if if you're hiring somebody to do it and it doesn't matter and you never want to look at it and you don't have to care about it, it just has to function. Well, then it goes down to, are the automations already there? Are the integrations already there, I should say? So QuickBooks has a limited functionality on Zapier. It's wide open on Make. For that sense, we would go to Make. Well, Zapier now released a feature, and so now it's wide open on Zapier as well. So that's no longer a fair comparison. But generally speaking, if it's available on both, Make is actually cheaper. And so, there's lots of other factors and variables. How difficult is it to use? How much power does it have, or the integrations? But if you're doing apples to apples, it's got the integrations built, and you don't care. You could use either platform. You're hiring it done, so you don't have to be technical. Make is actually cheaper. As far as how we built our business, how we've hitched it, we are continuing to expand our strategic partnerships because we believe that low code, no code is the future. And we believe that people will still come to us for help with low code, no code. And that's what we want to do, is build out systems, build out solutions for people on platforms that they can manage themselves. We just are there to help.
Well said. If you had to leave the listeners today with a warning or a PSA or just words of wisdom, Paul, when it comes to implementing automation, third-party integrators, AI within your business, what would that message be today?
Do it. You're already late. Just do it. And so that's the
Mm.
concept. Is if you've heard of this before, if you've thought about doing it for 6 months, stop thinking, hire it done, get it done, find somebody on Upwork, get your friend's cousin to do it, but automate your business. It will actually save you time. Um, we started this off saying I'm busy. I'm taking a season here of where I'm working less than 20 hours a week as a business owner because I can. And so I'm doing a lot more traveling now again. That's what makes me busy now, is I'm on a flight again on Monday. That's just what's going to happen. And I just landed on Tuesday. So, this is life for me right now. But that is only because we've put so many automations in place that systems are moving and going. I just saved one of my clients 15 hours a month. Every
Wow.
month, it took her 15 hours to do invoicing across the 500 projects that they work on. And and it took us 3 months to build it through consulting, but now, and it was less than 15 total hours across 3 months. But now every month she was given 15 hours back. And July was her first month where she's like, Paul, I have 15 hours to do what I want.
Where have you
And
been my whole
so,
life?
right, my advice
Mm.
to anybody, last remaining thoughts, is you're already too late. You have to do this to save yourself the time and automate your business.
Perfect. And if someone is ready to take that plunge, where's the best place that they can connect with you?
No, nice work. So
You like what I did there?
Connex.digital. Yeah, it's Connex, and then the word digital. There's no .com because it's the future, folks. So it's just Connex.digital. That's the best place. I'm really terrible at social media because I love actually living the Instagram life instead of Instagramming my life. And so, yeah, personally, go to our website. You can book a free discovery call right from there, and we can just get to chatting and see what happens.
Perfect. Paul, thanks so much for your time. I personally learned a lot. I took a ton of notes here. I can't wait to dig deeper into the tool because what I didn't say off the top was that I've been using Zapier for years, 12, 13 years now. And it was recently I was doing a partner certification exam and I had to back out of it. I had to say, "Hey, I'm not ready," because I had realized only in that moment that I've only scratched the surface as to what Zapier can do. There's so much that I don't know. So I so appreciate you sharing. We're going to stay connected because I have so many more questions and ways that I think we can work together. So thanks so much for your time today. Definitely appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.